For nearly 2 years, one question haunted him. What lay waiting at the bottom of that chute? Simply reaching it felt like a victory. All that remained now was hope that somewhere below, hundreds of ounces of gold had survived untouched. The sonar screen danced with static, revealing nothing but violent currents and jagged rock. This wasn't part of any carefully planned strategy. It was a last-ditch gamble in a season slipping out of Dustin Hurt's grasp. Then abruptly, the chaos on the screen resolved. A sharp, perfectly straight line appeared. Something nature could never form on its own. It was impossible. Beneath the riverbed, a tunnel had collapsed long ago, buried by time, never intended to be found. That instant would propel Dustin's team toward a gold haul they hadn't dared to imagine. Grab those nuggets. Nothing like this has ever crossed our path. The discovery nearly doubled Dustin's previous best season. But the real surprise wasn't the gold. The deepest secret remained hidden, deep within the shadowed canyon, where most legends die. From the start, Dustin sensed this season was unlike any other. He'd taken risks before, battling brutal weather, failing equipment, even the wrath of the river itself. But this challenge dwarfed them all. Nothing in his experience compared to the canyon now before him. The locals called it the Devil's Throat. Not a name they used lightly, it sounded more like a warning than a label. This wasn't a canyon carved gently by centuries of water. It had a presence, almost alive. The river roared endlessly, its thunder echoing off the narrow walls, shaking the ground and reminding all who dared enter that some never came back. "I hope you're right," he muttered. Seeing that, it felt like getting slapped across the face by 100 years of history. On old maps, the area was barely marked at all. Just empty space, a no-go zone. Surveyors had left blunt notes in the margins. Unstable ground, deadly currents, not worth the risk. But to Dustin, those warnings weren't deterrents. They were invitations. Plenty of people chase legends of lost gold, and Dustin was no exception. He'd spent too many seasons grinding himself down for tiny returns. If there was even a slim chance this canyon held untouched riches from the past, walking away was never an option. He made it clear to the crew, survive this place, and they'd leave with a legendary payday. Their first steps into the canyon were cautious. Every man was on edge. The deeper they went, the tighter the walls seemed to close in. The ground was treacherous. Slick stones, loose gravel, and uneven footing, waiting to send someone crashing down. What nobody prepares you for is the noise. In a narrow canyon, sound has nowhere to escape. Every footstep, every strained rope is amplified, and beneath it all, the river, hissing, crashing, relentless. It crawls into your head. The crew talked quietly about the last team that tried to mine this ground. They'd come in with massive dredges and heavy equipment. They didn't last long. "This is it. We leave loaded, or we leave broke." A flash flood erased what remained of their camp. The machines were still there, scattered along the riverbank. Twisted, rusted wrecks. A permanent warning. Dustin kept moving forward. He'd studied journals written by miners nearly a century earlier. The frantic handwriting told stories of a canyon that swallowed men whole. Instead of fear, those words lit a fire. This was the challenge. He cinched down his harness, checked every piece of gear, and went to work. If the canyon didn't end them, it would make them legends. The farther they pushed, the more the canyon fought back. Machines were lowered piece by piece, cables screaming under unbearable strain. A 40,000-pound excavator sank into mud the moment it touched ground. Hydraulic lines froze solid, clogged by grit and icy spray. Pumps failed again and again as the current shoved silt and stone into every moving part. It felt like the canyon itself was trying to bury them alive. Then the rock slides began. At first, it was just pebbles clattering off helmets. Moments later, entire sheets of rock tore loose from the canyon walls without warning. Tools were abandoned as men sprinted for cover while tons of debris slammed down around them. The moment that nearly ended everything came without warning. A main winch cable, thick as a man's arm, snapped. The sound exploded through the canyon. A dredge the size of a small house swung violently, a massive steel wrecking ball aimed straight at the crew. Time stopped. It missed them by inches, crashing into the canyon wall and hanging there, swaying. It knocked the wind out of me. We almost lost the dredge, and I almost went over that waterfall. That would have been it. The crew looked to Dustin, shaken, expecting him to finally pull the plug. Anyone else would have. Supplies were running out. Equipment was breaking down. By all logic, the season was over. Dustin didn't see it that way. He gathered the exhausted team and made an announcement that sounded completely insane. They weren't here for 2,000 ounces anymore. That goal was too small. The new target, 3,500 ounces. No one spoke. It was either reckless desperation or absolute faith. This wasn't a challenge anymore. It was war. Dustin was betting everything on a half-forgotten story written in an old journal, whispers carried by the water. While the crew struggled to process the impossible goal, Dustin's thoughts were already deeper. He could feel it. Empty spaces beneath the river, hidden chambers. Secrets the water was guarding. He had to see them. Without much explanation, he called for equipment they'd never used in conditions this extreme. Submersible sonar drones. These weren't toys. They were professional-grade machines designed for deep-sea mapping and cave rescues, each costing over $50,000. Dropping them into the raging current felt reckless. The drones were slammed and tossed like debris, nearly torn apart. But Dustin forced them deeper. Is it dangerous? Yes. Can he handle it? Absolutely. Eyes locked on the flickering screens, the grainy images slowly sharpened. Like something emerging from fog, the canyon floor revealed itself. Then everything changed. The sonar exposed a void. A massive dark hollow beneath the riverbed. A collapsed tunnel branching off from the main channel. Something no one knew existed, and it wasn't empty. The scans revealed dense clusters buried beneath the rubble. Dark, compact shapes that could only mean one thing. Mineral-rich rock sealed away under tons of stone and water. The shape was wrong. Too straight, too precise. This wasn't natural. This wasn't a cave. Someone had built this. Someone had been here before. Dustin immediately grabbed the old weather-stained journals. The pages whispered of an impossible gold drift buried deep beneath the canyon. For decades, everyone had shrugged it off as legend, a desperate tale from a failed miner. Too dangerous, too deep, too unlikely. But now, staring at the screen in front of them, the myth was becoming real. The 3D sonar map revealed a winding passage threading through solid rock. Pockets so dense they practically glowed on the display. Quartz laced with gold. The crew erupted into debate. Some were terrified. Trying to open a tunnel buried beneath a raging river? That was madness. Just getting dangerous, man. Just getting dangerous. It's gonna keep hitting us for the next 2-3 weeks. Honestly, I think I'm calling it. Season's over, one muttered. Others, though, stared at the map, eyes wide, finally seeing what Dustin had seen all along, a fortune that could change their lives forever. Dustin cut through the arguments with one simple command. They weren't chasing tiny river flakes anymore. They were going after the tunnel. Whatever had stopped miners a century ago, they would face it head-on. Reckless? Absolutely. But this was their only real shot at a jackpot. The next few days were a blur of engineering chaos. Steel cages were lowered to reinforce the canyon's weakest points. Anchors drilled deep into stone. Bit by bit, the site transformed from a death trap into something almost fortress-like. Slowly, a shaft began to open into the hidden passage, a hole into the past, a doorway unseen for over 100 years. When they finally descended, the mood shifted. Headlamps cut piercing cones of light into darkness that felt alive. The air grew colder, damper, thicker with every step down, and the shaft was full of ghosts. Rusted lanterns clung to the walls. Broken shovels and corroded nails lay scattered like bones. Someone had carved initials into the rock. Time had blurred them into near obscurity. It was a silent testament to men who had worked here and vanished. The tunnel plunged far deeper than expected, over 100 feet straight down, into frozen mud and ice. They were trespassers, finishing a job abandoned in mystery a century ago. But what they discovered inside was far stranger than gold. At the bottom of that cold, silent shaft, a flashlight beam caught something that stole everyone's breath. Quartz. Bright white veins, etched sharply against black stone, glimmering. At first, it looked like frost, but as the light shifted, it happened. Flashes of gold. More gold? Are you seeing this? Yeah, look at that. Beautiful. Oh my God. The scene was so breathtaking, it froze them in place. This wasn't dust. This was gold you could see with your own eyes, shimmering directly from the rock. One geologist on the crew dropped to his knees, voice trembling. This was a bonanza, the kind of find that turns prospectors into legends. They quickly rigged a makeshift sluice from whatever gear could be carried down. Kneeling in freezing black water, the men fed rock and sediment into the machine by hand. Their breaths hung like smoke in the icy air. The rhythm was relentless. Shovel, dump, wash, repeat. Every motion driven by the golden light glimmering from the walls. Hours later, the first tray was lifted, heavy, dripping with wet black sand, and at the bottom, gold. 52 ounces in a single pass, nearly $100,000 worth in under a day. The crew erupted, their shouts echoing so loudly the tunnel seemed to tremble. After every disaster, every near death, this was proof. The canyon wasn't a curse. It was real, and it was richer than any of them had imagined. Look at the size of those. Holy crap. This is going to be our best cleanup ever. They pushed on, running the sluice tirelessly, every pan heavier than the last. 3 days passed in a blur of backbreaking work. When the total was tallied, over 2,000 ounces had been recovered. In under 72 hours, they'd pulled nearly $4 million in gold from one spot. A miracle. But the canyon wasn't finished testing them. Generators failed, sputtering into silence one by one. Instead of quitting, the crew improvised, hand-cranking pumps to keep the sluice running. Brutal, relentless labor, but it kept the operation alive. On day 4, Dustin ordered more sonar scans. If this much gold was visible so fast, he needed to see what lay beneath. The results were staggering. The quartz vein didn't end after a few feet. It stretched. The scans traced a glowing artery of gold over a mile long, frozen in stone. Core samples confirmed it. Thick, high-purity gold, worth an estimated $50 million or more. One of the richest finds in modern Alaska history. Holy moly, I've never seen anything so beautiful in my life. Look at that, more gold than we've ever touched. Right here. Finding treasure, this immense, changes a person. They had the gold, but had they survived the canyon, or merely found a prettier way to be trapped by it? The mystery of the miners who first dug the tunnel remained. Why abandon a $50 million vein? Dustin immediately pulled out the old, weather-stained journals. Every page carried the desperation and obsession of miners long gone. They had written of a hidden gold drift deep beneath the canyon, a vein so rich it was almost impossible to believe. For decades, everyone dismissed it as a legend, a desperate tale of men who had failed and vanished. Too dangerous, too deep, too unlikely. But staring at the flickering sonar screen, the impossible was beginning to take shape. The 3D map revealed a tunnel twisting through solid rock, like a vein of life frozen in stone. Pockets of quartz glowed under sonar, hinting at gold embedded in a pattern that no one would call natural. The crew gathered, murmuring anxiously. Some were terrified. Just getting dangerous, man, just getting dangerous. I think this is going to hit us hard for weeks. Honestly, I'm calling it. Season's over, one muttered. Others, however, were transfixed, their eyes wide. Finally, they saw what Dustin had seen all along. A fortune beyond imagining, a chance to rewrite their lives. Dustin cut through hesitation with a simple command. They weren't chasing tiny river flakes anymore. They were going after the tunnel. Whatever had stopped miners a century ago, they would face it head-on. The plan was reckless, insane even. But it was their only shot at the ultimate jackpot. The next few days were a blur of engineering chaos. Steel cages were lowered to reinforce the canyon's weakest points. Anchors were drilled deep into the stone. Slowly, the site transformed from a death trap into something resembling a fortress. And then, a shaft began to open into the hidden passage, a doorway into the past, unseen for over a century. Their first descent changed everything. Headlamps sliced sharp cones into darkness that seemed to move, alive with shadows. The air grew colder, heavier, wetter with every foot dropped. Rusted lanterns clung stubbornly to the walls. Broken shovels, corroded nails, and carved initials were frozen in time. A silent testament to the miners who had vanished here. The tunnel plunged far deeper than expected, over 100 feet straight down, into mud and ice. They were intruders, finishing a job abandoned in mystery. And then, at the bottom, the beam of a flashlight caught something extraordinary. Quartz veins glimmered white against black stone. At first it looked like frost, but then gold flashed like trapped sunlight bouncing back at them. "Do you see that?" one whispered. "Yeah. Beautiful," another said, voice trembling. "Oh my God." This wasn't dust. It was gold you could see, sparkling in veins and pockets throughout the quartz. One geologist dropped to his knees. This is a bonanza, a find that turns miners into legends." The crew rigged a makeshift sluice. Kneeling in icy water, they shoveled rock and sediment into the machine by hand. Water sprayed. Their breath hung like smoke. Rhythm became ritual. Shovel, dump, wash, repeat. Every motion guided by the golden shimmer in the walls. Hours passed. Then the first tray emerged, heavy, black, with wet sand. And at the bottom, gold. 52 ounces. Nearly $100,000 in under a day. The crew erupted. Cheers echoed through the canyon, bouncing off the walls. After all the danger, lost equipment, and near disasters, the proof was undeniable. The canyon was real and richer than any had imagined. "Look at those flakes. Holy crap. This is our best cleanup ever." They pushed on, each pan heavier than the last. 3 relentless days later, over 2,000 ounces had been recovered, nearly $4 million from one spot. A miracle forged from risk, grit, and determination. But the canyon wasn't done testing them. Generators failed, sputtering into silence. Instead of quitting, the crew improvised, hand-cranking pumps to keep the sluice alive. Brutal labor, but it kept the operation running. On day 4, Dustin ordered more sonar scans. If this much gold had been pulled so quickly, they needed to see the full vein. What appeared on the screens stunned everyone. The quartz vein didn't end. It stretched for over a mile, an artery of gold, frozen in stone. Core samples confirmed the impossible: thick, pure gold, potentially worth $50 million or more. One of the richest finds in modern Alaskan history. "Holy moly, I've never seen anything like this," one crew member whispered. "More gold than we've ever touched, right here." But then something unusual appeared on the sonar, small, angular shapes that didn't belong. They weren't part of the natural formation. Some were hollow, almost like tunnels within tunnels, perfectly square in cross-section. "Guys, look at this," Dustin said. His voice was tense. "This isn't just a vein, it's a structure. Someone built this." The crew froze. It was impossible, yet undeniable. The shapes hinted at hidden chambers buried beneath the river. They decided to investigate. Using ropes and pulleys, they descended into the newly uncovered tunnels. The walls were unnaturally smooth, carved with intent. Tools, scaffolding, and remnants of timber lay frozen in time. This wasn't just a mine. It was a carefully constructed underground labyrinth. Then they reached a sealed chamber. Dust and shadows filled the air, thick as smoke. Crates stacked neatly lined the walls. Curiosity overrode caution. Dustin pried open the first crate, and what lay inside stunned them all. Charts, maps, and handwritten logs, but also artifacts that didn't belong to any known mining operation. Strange carved stones, symbols etched into metal, bundles of paper with cryptic diagrams. Whoever had worked here before hadn't just mined gold. They'd hidden something else entirely. This changes everything," Dustin muttered. The gold had been the prize everyone expected, but the real treasure was knowledge. Secrets buried beneath the river, waiting 100 years for someone brave or foolish enough to uncover them. Then the ground trembled. A faint rumble echoed through the chamber. Water from the river above began to seep through cracks in the walls. They had disturbed something delicate, something the canyon didn't want unearthed. Dustin Hurt risked it all and hit the ultimate jackpot. Genius, luck, or destiny? That question still hangs in the air. What do you think? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more epic discoveries.